Women gardeners.
Hi, my name is Nathan.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Rachel.
This week, for our channel of the week, we have with us Jason Williams of Cloud Gardener UK. Jason gardens on a balcony 18 floors up on his apartment building in Manchester, UK. He is a multi-Royal Horticultural Society award-winning garden designer and is Garden Media Guild's Social Media Communicator of the Year winner. Jason has taken gardening to a whole new level. It's a pleasure to have him on the show with us. Let's welcome Jason, the Cloud
Hi.
Gardener.
Hi.
Yes, awesome to have you on the show with us. When I first thought of doing this show, I knew I've been following you now for a few years. I think pretty much since you got started doing that. I don't know, remember where I found you, but I thought this guy is really taking balcony gardening to a whole nother level. I mean, you're 18 floors up in this building, and I thought it was just the coolest thing because I got started in my whole vegetable and fruit, growing experience with a cucumber I grew on a balcony in an apartment I lived in. It was only 2 floors up, but when I saw that you're way up on this building, really taking it seriously and doing some great gardening, I was like, I gotta have this guy on my channel.
I can't even remember when you started to follow me. I think it really has been like a good couple of years. I think you've probably seen my journey from scratch all the way to where I am now. So thank you
Yes.
for following me back then.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been doing some really cool stuff. I think that's one of the great things about following you is seeing all these great things that you've been up to, since, just starting your journey on your balcony. You're doing all sorts of stuff, garden designing, you're doing all these different shows. And as I mentioned, you're Royal Horticultural Society award-winning garden designer. How
I still
about that?
don't
I
believe
mean,
it.
I know. How about that? Going from just growing some things on your balcony to, having it really kind of just change your life and take you in this whole other direction, right?
100%. And I think you know, I've only been gardening for 2 years. So to have achieved so much in the space of 2 years or so, it's been incredible. Um, and it started off here on YouTube. So I created my YouTube channel because here in the UK there wasn't much, there weren't many resources for balcony gardeners. Um,
Yeah.
and I suffered quite a lot of losses actually when I started gardening on my balcony. And I tried doing what everybody was telling me to do, going through the basics and how to grow everything, but it just wasn't working in my space. And I decided to rip up the rule book and try and figure things out for myself. And that's when I began to learn the difference between a ground level garden and a garden that's 18 floors up. You've got things like the wind that you need to really battle with. My balcony has glass railings, so the sun magnifies the heat, which can make my balcony 10 to 15 degrees warmer than it is on the ground level. So if you just think about like the amount of stress that my plants are consistently going through, that's something that I have to manage on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And even things like pollinators and beneficial insects, how balcony gardening can be so different because I don't have the same level of access that ground level gardens do. So it's turned from gardening to almost science in a way.
Yeah.
And trying to manage the whole microclimate.
Yeah. There's lots of different elements that are a bit different from what a normal ground level garden would be, and even most balcony gardens too. Like I said, I was just on a second floor balcony of an apartment I lived in, growing my cucumber. I didn't necessarily have to deal with much more difference than what it was at ground level, the wind and, like you're saying, and I can't imagine what it's like up on 18 floors up. That wind's got to be whipping pretty good at times.
100%. And, you know, it doesn't even have to be, you know, on a stormy day. It could just be your average day.
Mhm.
And when you live in the city, the tall buildings, they change the flow of the wind. And so it could be perfectly fine and calm on the ground level, but on my balcony, you know, it's like a storm. So it's really, really unpredictable. And I had to learn to understand that there are going to be losses on my garden
Yeah.
and be okay with it. It still hurts, but especially when you grow from
Nobody
seed.
likes losing plants, that's for sure.
No, so one time I made a whole video about it on YouTube actually, but one time I had a whole greenhouse. Just we have like these kind of portable mini greenhouses, and I had one on my balcony, and I had trays and trays and trays of seeds that I'd sown. And I came out onto the balcony one day, and the greenhouse had been lifted and dragged halfway down the balcony, and I lost all of my seeds, and
Oh,
I
no.
cried. It was
Oh, yeah.
heartbreaking. It was absolutely devastating.
Oh, yes, that's again too, it's one of those things I can definitely relate to because nobody loves or likes the idea of putting so much time into things, or at least having that anticipation of what you're growing. You know, you start a seed and you know, you're thinking, oh, this is where this is going to go. This is what I'm going to do, you know, and you're planning all of that out. And then just to see it kind of go
Yes.
it can be really devastating. So again, so you're up there. What are some of those things that, you know, over time you found that works really best for growing on your balcony garden?
So, just for anyone who wants to start balcony garden, just if they have a balcony, first thing I always recommend, and the first thing that I always do as a balcony garden designer, the first question is, what is your weight limit?
Right.
Because some balcony gardens are, some balconies are clipped on here in the UK. So they build the whole building and then the balcony gets like added on last.
Oh,
My balcony is an extension of the flooring, so it can hold the same amount of weight as my front room can. So
okay.
that's like top tip number one. But one of the things that I've really had to learn in my garden is grow what my garden will allow me to grow, not what I want to grow, because the
Yeah.
two things are really, really different. And now having a new career as a garden designer, this is one of the first things that I have to have a conversation about with my clients, and I call it "be for real."
Be for
And
real.
be for real. So,
Yeah.
you know, just the other day, I had a client, and they had this roof terrace, and they wanted me to design it, but they wanted it to look kind of similar to my show garden at Chelsea, and wanted it to be this massive floral perennial garden. And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. I can do that. I get there, and it's a north-facing balcony, or sorry, it's a north-facing roof terrace that only gets sun up until 12 p.m.
Oh,
And I was like, mm, that's not
yeah.
going to work here. So, so you go into this explanation and explain why this probably won't work, and then explain some options that I could provide. And you know, I had to create this garden, but I managed to incorporate color through the containers, through some of the plants in the living wall that I created. Um, but you know, the beauty of that garden was the fact that it was 90% evergreen. And I was like, that's
Right.
something that I can't do on my balcony because these
Yeah.
plants would suffer. But you know, I've managed to create this wonderful living wall here that has got lots and lots of color in it. And it's going to work out perfectly for you, and it will stay this color, and you can use this garden all year round. And so
Yeah.
sometimes it's about troubleshooting and trying to shift people's mindsets and give them something that works.
Yeah. And you know, one of the other things that I find interesting that you talk about, and again, for being so high up there, 18 floors up on a balcony is, you're still dealing with pests when it comes to trying to take care of your plants. What are some of those issues you deal with that are maybe unique to the balcony garden, or, similar to what you would find on the ground level as well?
Well, I think it's really important to go back to what I was saying before about all of those difficulties I have with the sun and the wind and the stress
Yeah.
that puts the plants under.
Mhm.
Because what happens is, because my plants are consistently under stress, they're sending out the pheromones and the signals that attracts the aphids.
Yeah.
And so what then happens is I can have an aphid infestation like that. They
Yeah.
will just accelerate their life cycle and start producing more and more. And so the trouble is that I don't have as many beneficial insects or animals that will come and take care of those aphids for me.
Right.
And I don't necessarily like spraying my garden with anything.
Mhm.
And so, I've had to find new ways of dealing with it. And so sometimes it could be the case that I will introduce ladybirds and ladybird larvae into
Yeah.
the garden to help take
Yeah.
care of it. But I also had to learn to create so I had to learn to create an area that would attract hoverflies. And so
Okay.
on my channel, I have a video about hoverflies, and I created my balcony fish pond. Yes, I have a fish pond.
A fish pond.
But I created the fish pond because I was hoping that the hoverfly larvae would be aquatic like normal. But my hoverflies don't do that. They lay eggs next to the aphid colonies, and then the hoverfly larvae will eat the aphids.
Okay.
And it's amazing to me. And so
Yeah.
that got me thinking more about my space. So I then tend to plant flowers that I know are going to attract the hoverflies, so that I have a constant supply of natural predators in my garden. But that has to be incorporated into the planting scheme. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's very unique.
Yeah. And unique in a sense of how you're able to handle that in that space that you're growing in. But then again, also, as you said, I mean, aphids. I mean, you're 18 floors up and you're still getting aphids, so those things will find themselves anywhere and almost everywhere. So you have to do and take some of those similar strategies, like you said, introducing other predators into your garden space in order to take care of them too, because aphids could start overrunning things before you know it.
Yeah, and so my last video, one of my last videos, I really had to make a tough decision, and I have to hold my hands up, and I did have to do a little bit of a spray on the garden, and it's not something that I advocate, but I know that garden so well now that if I had allowed that to happen before my seedlings, before anything had come up, I wouldn't have a garden.
Yeah.
So, and it was a real moment for me. However, now the garden is it's balanced back out again, and I think this is one of the things, again, as a balcony gardener, that you really have to look at, is the fact that you're really balancing an ecosystem, and sometimes you have to take steps that you really don't want to do just to keep that balance. For example, I have slugs on my garden as well, even though
Yeah.
I'm 18 floors up.
Again,
They,
too. Yeah.
oh, it's so annoying.
Oh,
But your normal way of dealing with slugs is, hoping that hedgehogs or frogs or toads or birds are going to come and eat these slugs. But again, I don't have any of those in my garden. So I
yeah.
have to once again step in, because they multiply really, really quickly.
Yeah.
So, I will go and collect them up in a little box, and I'll take them down to the river, and I release them elsewhere. But it's a constant battle. And just like most gardeners, it feels like, okay, I may have just sorted out the aphid situation. I've got some more hoverflies in the garden. And then I take a look down the end of the garden, and then there's a slug party, and you're like, oh, give me a break.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of late night hunting with you get a little flashlight on your
Yes.
You do a little headlight and go out in
Honestly,
the nighttime.
I had to do that hunting vine weevils a couple of weeks ago, and they are one of the most devastating creatures on that balcony garden. This was my first year dealing with them, and I had to go
They
through
finally
every
found you.
single one of my containers. Yes.
Oh
Yeah.
my. Oh my. Well, that's great. Like I said, everybody needs to go check out your channel and check out what you grow there too. I think it's just really wonderful and unique and all of that that you do. Let's talk a little bit more about your, again, too, Royal Horticultural Society award winner. Let's talk about doing shows and how did you, end up doing that? I mean, you go from making your own garden. Obviously, you're learning things and all of that, but next thing you know, you're venturing out to show and do garden designing and all of that.
Well, so I attended the RHS flower show called Chelsea in September 2021, just as a guest, and um, it was the first year that they ever had a balcony garden container section, and that was really, really amazing. Um, but I wanted to create a garden could um, that was realistic and that looked like mine. So I went back to home after being at Chelsea, and I had to do a little bit of thinking, and I decided to enter in and put in my own application, and it actually was um, it was a replica of my very own garden. So I managed to include lots of things like my rose arches, my pond, um, and just elements like that. And the idea behind this garden was to show that even if you don't have lots of space, even if you don't have lots of money, if you just put things together in a really nice way, you can have a really amazing space. Um, and for me personally, uh, as a renter, it was really important for me to show other renters that they are able to create a garden, even if the home is not technically theirs.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I did a talk for the Garden Conservancy a few months ago, and there's a real difference between what renters can do in the US to the UK. So if you rent a home in the UK, you are not allowed to make any form of changes to your garden or
Mm.
inside of the house unless you have specific instructions from the landlord that you can do so.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it often feels like you know that you're renting, but it feels like you're really in somebody else's home. So
Yeah.
sometimes you can be really reluctant to start gardening or to start doing things. And so I think that's probably where my channels and where my social media content has become kind of successful in a way, is because I'm showing people who are renters that, well, if you can't touch your garden, if you can't touch the walls, if you can't do anything, you can at least use containers and
Mhm.
still have a garden.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really love about what you do and your channel and all of that, because that's also kind of my emphasis in what I do here on the Urban Gardener channel, is to talk about utilizing small spaces and showing people that you can do all sorts of different things to take advantage of the sort of areas that you might have. And I'm a renter as well too. I have, for the most part, been able to do, what I want around the different garden spaces that I have. I have had one instance though too, where the ownership of this place, actually the previous owner, I've got a new owner now, but the previous owner was like, "Oh no, we're not good with that. You got to take that down," type of thing. I had a bunch of containers up on a carport rooftop growing peppers. So I had like a pepper garden
Yeah.
up on this carport rooftop, and the previous owners weren't really into that whole idea. I'm now working my new owner to see if I can't get that back up there now, but there are a few limitations when it comes to that, when you're renting and all of that. But like you said, when it comes down to it, you can utilize containers in so many ways. And I've found that you know there's not really anything. I mean, there's some limitations. I can't really grow corn for say, out of a container. There's some things, there's some limitations, but for the most part, you can grow most anything. out of even just a 5-gallon bucket. You know, it's one of
Yeah.
the things we use on my channel. You can build up easily, you know, some elevated beds, you know, if you want, you know, that sort of thing. Or, you know, put in some water features like you've done on your balcony too, you know, put a pond in a little space or something to be able to, you know, diversify what you're doing in your space and all of that. And that's really great, because I think that, you know, it's important for people to understand that, you know, even if you do have those small spaces, you can grow, you can garden, and there's so many benefits to growing and gardening that, you know, you might as well take advantage of it if you can.
I agree 100%. And, you know, once I started my YouTube channel, I then began to share how my mental health was improved by
Mhm.
having my garden. And so, you know, I've been really honest on all of my platforms, on, you know, Instagram, TikTok, whichever platform it is that I'm posting on. I've shared my journey with um, anxiety and depression, and how that can be such a crazy place to be, but then going out into the garden, it's really calming, and it's like a time of reflection. And the the difficult part for me now is when I go out into the garden, I'm normally having to set up a tripod and film and do a whole load of things, and it's sad, but it's becoming work,
Yes.
and that's not what my garden was intended to be. And
Yeah.
I'm really, really grateful to the audience who follow me, because I've been really honest with that. And so when I'm really going through stuff, I don't post.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those uh, people who follows the rules where you have to post on social media every day. On Instagram,
Yeah.
for example, to grow your channel, or, you know, with YouTube, they say you have to post every. No, I just post when I can.
Yeah.
And I think not having to have that pressure has allowed me to really begin to re-enjoy my space again. So if there are any content creators who are watching who feel the same, listen, put
It's
yourself
yeah.
first sometimes, because that's what helps you to create the best content. So otherwise you
Yeah.
get into this content burnout, and you feel like you're just chugging out this content, and then it becomes inauthentic because you're not happy.
Yeah, it can definitely happen, and it's one of the things I've had to learn to do too. I've been, you know, making videos and running my channel now for a bit over 6 years now. And early on, I was just trying to chase every bit of footage, every bit of things I could film and share and all of that. But what I learned was that, you know, I'd have to take days, even though I would like to film some things, I just have to take those days and leave the camera indoors and spend those
Yeah,
days out in the garden myself.
exactly.
Because,
Yeah,
like you said, one of the big things is very similar. You know, we have a similar story when it comes to that sort of stuff. You know, I found that gardening through, you know, stresses and, you know, again, anxiety, depression, all those sort of things, I think a lot of us deal with. And I found, you know, when I was gardening, that I found so much relief in that. And
yeah.
and I think it's really important, like you said, just to be able to take some me time, you know, you time in the garden. And if you're, you know, a creator, to do that as well, it's even more important, because it can be work when you're trying to plan out, film, and do all that sort of stuff. But again, it's really rewarding too. I mean, I love being able to share what I do with other people and all of that as well too, you know. And I think it's really great to be able to have the channel I have the audience I have watching what I'm doing, you know. So it's important to me to be able to get out and share that as well too. But yeah, you got to take some time for yourself.
100%. And you know, I feel like if I wasn't doing that, then I would be doing the people who watch my content a disservice, because it's like I'm not practicing what I'm preaching. So, you know,
Yeah.
I hope sometimes by showing people that, hold on, I'm taking a step back. Like, for instance, I posted something recently because I have a balcony pond that is now live on my website that people can order. But other than that, I don't think I've posted anything in a week or two. And
Yeah.
I just needed a break. And I think I'll be coming back to content creating next week. Now I'm feeling a little bit more refreshed, but I have to keep in mind that I'm working so that I can encourage other people to create these spaces, because it's my intent that hopefully there could be somebody else in a different city who had no idea that they could garden on a balcony. They give it a go, and all of a sudden they then realize the therapeutic benefit. So I feel like I have to be at the top of my game. And in order to do that, sometimes I do need to take a step back.
Yeah. Yep. You got to do what you got to do to keep your own mental health in a positive place. It's really important for all of us. Again, I like mentioning too, I did an interview with the author, Karen Hughes. She wrote a book called Leave Your Troubles Behind. And I really always recommend that to people too, who utilize gardening for stress management and all of that too, because again, it's probably one of the biggest benefits of gardening is, that aspect of it. And then you get food, you get flowers, you get, a really nice space to look at, as well too. But what we get out of it for ourselves is really important. Well, I really want to thank you though too for joining with us today on Let's Get Growing and sharing all of that with us and sharing your gardening with us too, Jason. Really awesome to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Yes, and again, go and check out Jason's YouTube channel. We've got a link down below in the description there, Cloud Gardener UK, and catch up with what he's got growing on there up on 18 floors on a really cool building, balcony garden. Awesome.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.